All right, welcome to yet another episode of Tour Talk.
Here we
Hey,
are.
babe, how you doing?
Very good. Just in my black void.
You look great.
Woo.
It's like you're a floating head on a. There's like black and then your head and then black. I feel like
That's
this is
the
like
goal.
a snippet into your soul almost.
Yeah, the goal is to be a floating head. If I could just get rid of my body and existence on this plane, I would be much happier.
Hey, you know, like Skype's got different backgrounds you can select and stuff. We could put you on like the San Fran Bridge or whatever. We could make this a real visual thing for
really,
you.
if you could decapitate me and I could just have my head floating around with no, you could put a handle like a bowling ball on the top of my head and just cart me around and I could just talk to people. I'd be totally fine with that.
I'll make it happen.
Anymore
I'll make things happen. I can do
about living.
So I thought we'd get started today with talking about your first ever experience touring abroad, like how it came about, where you went, how it was executed, like whether you were on a bus or in a van,
Right.
which countries you went
Right.
to. Because my one's a little different, but I want to hear yours first, and then I'll give you my story.
Mine's a quick twofold, and I could talk about it in a very long way. But the first time in Lionize, when I traveled out of the country to play show or to do anything with the band, we went to Jamaica in 2009 to make a record in Kingston.
Pretty great start.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was us and the guitar player from Clutch, Tim Salt, ended up coming down with us to jam, and we were there for a few weeks, and that was amazing. So that was our first foray, really. Like, Canada kind of doesn't count because you just go across the border and play a show. And
You're half Canadian anyway, so...
Yeah, correct. So we went to Jamaica in 2009, and that was just a crazy immersive experience where we're like, holy shit, we are not in the States, you know?
Do you want to tell me why you went to Jamaica to make a record when you could have done it in DC? Or?
Yeah, I guess I should give you some details. We were on tour with in a lot with this band called Steel Pulse. They're from Birmingham. They're pretty famous. They're probably the most famous UK reggae band. They're amazing. They're so good, and they really influenced the Police in a major way. The Police's whole sound, Sting vocally, is really borrowed from David Hines, the singer from Steel Pulse. So we had the pleasure of going on tour with these guys a bunch, and their musical director and one of the co-writers of a lot of their songs, this guy Sidney Mills, he's actually Jamaican, not an immigrant to England, and he said, hey man, I can get us in a studio down there, and if you guys were ever interested in recording in Jamaica, and obviously why not just try it? So in my head, I'm kind of like, oh shit, what's that going to cost? The budget's going to be crazy. And it just turns out that to record down there for like 2 or 3 weeks would basically be the same as 5 or 6 days in a real proper studio up here. So we just bought plane tickets and found a place to stay and just did it. And it was wild. We went between a few different studios, and we worked out of Harry J's, we worked out of Boot Camp, and we worked out of Studio One. And it was just really, really bizarre. Like, it was amazing, and it was like being completely immersed in someone else's culture, country, completely.
Sure.
And we smoked a lot of weed. More weed than we could ever. We were so that was the first time I experienced like a weed hangover, where like the morning I would wake up and just be so dehydrated and so like out of it from smoking so much weed that it was just like.
Did it actually help being that stoned creatively?
It's so fun. Yeah, it's so fun. I mean, I don't know if it helped, but it's really fun. And then I'll never forget in 2014. Right after the Warped Tour in the fall, Clutch took us to England for the first time, and that was our first time playing shows overseas. Oh no, that's not true.
You can't lie to the. You can't
I'm
lie
sorry,
on the
dude.
podcast.
I'm sorry, dude. The first time we went to England, we played in the UK. We played with, fuck. I don't remember now if we did the Lords. I don't remember if we did the Lords of the Rift tour. No, Clutch took us in 2014 to the Lords of the Rift tour, and Clutch took us on tour to their own shows around the UK in 2014. Then 2015, we came back immediately, and we were one of the co-headliners of Planet Rock, the classic rock magazine's Lords of the Rift tour.
Cool. So
Sorry.
I'm glad you got that. We're good.
Jesus Christ.
Right. So I've got to ask some questions about Jamaica first, and then we'll get on to you coming over to the UK. So one, it's really unusual to bounce around studios whilst making a record.
So
For me, how was that for you? Like,
it was interesting. I mean, a lot of the idea of going down there to record too, from the producer's aspect, was that like we had a little bit of money to make the record, and he was in a position where he kind of wanted to spread some of the money around, if that makes sense. So
Okay.
from a community standpoint, he was like, all right, we could cut vocals here, but the studio's booked that day. So instead of taking a full day off, let's just go cut studios at another studio, and and we'll make this guy a little bit of money, and you'll be able to work for the day. So we were totally on board for that.
so it wasn't about this studio's got a great drum room, this one's got a great...
That was also part of
dead
it.
room for
That
vocals.
was also part of it. Yeah, one of the studios was like, "Oh, this guy Squidly Cole at Studio One in Portmore in Jamaica in Kingston. He was getting these drum sounds that like Stephen Marley and Ziggy Marley were using. He was getting these drum sounds that Capleton was using. So we were like, oh, that'd be awesome. Let's go there. So, and the most amazing thing about that is that the idea in Jamaica of recording stuff, it's just super different than here, where it's like, all right, we show up at noon and we're gonna work for 6 hours straight, and then we're gonna take a 1 hour lunch break, and then we're gonna work again, and then it's dinner, and then we're gonna work again, and then we're gonna go to sleep and repeat. There, it's kind of like, all right, we're doing drums today. Come between 10 and 12. It might take 3-4 hours to get some drums done. Then we're gonna smoke some weed. Then the guy who's the engineer is going to go in a boat. He's going to get in his boat, and he's going to go catch some fish. And then he's going to steam the fish up for lunch. I loved it personally. It just took a minute It took a minute to get used to that workflow of like, it's all about a vibe. So if the vibe doesn't feel right, you're stopping. Like, you're just going to fix the vibe.
I mean, I don't know a lot about recording in Jamaica and stuff, but what I do or have heard about how they made all the Wailers records and stuff is that essentially they would have everybody in a room, and they would track the whole thing with everybody in one room with whatever mics they had, one guy on the board, and just cut it to tape right there. So I'm assuming things had like progressed a bit by the time you got there, but...
All the early reggae stuff that you hear is literally done live in a room. They don't give a shit. And the reason it sounds so cool is because they don't have, at the time, they didn't have the best equipment, and they didn't have all this new stuff and access to stuff, and they had to kind of fix stuff on the go. So we got to experience that. And now we were in this one studio called Harry J's, which is like all the Toots and the Maytal stuff. I mean, it's a super famous studio. Bob Marley recorded there, and it's like you could. The thing about recording in Jamaica was feeling the energy in the room. That's a totally real thing. I think when music is created in a place, it leaves this sort of imprint, this energy in the room, and you could feel it. I mean, and the studio was haunted, which was the
By
first
you,
experience. Oh, it was definitely haunted by us, but somebody had been murdered at the studio, I think, at one point. They were telling us. And
wow.
I mean, yeah, Kingston's a no-joke place. I mean, it's a tough place. Mm-hmm. So we were in the studio recording, and a couple things happened where at one point somebody felt someone tapping them on their shoulder, and they turned around, but the next closest person was like, 10, 15 feet away. Then one time we were all in the control room. There was like 8 people in the control room, and we were high. But at the same time, I've never experienced anything like this. This is totally real. This is not just for the story's sake. We were recording and listening to a playback, and someone said something like, oh, we should go cut this again, and let's go into the room and cut it again. And as he said it, everyone at the same time went like this and saw somebody walking out of the room into the other room.
Nope.
I swear on my life.
Nope.
At the same time, 8 people's heads went like this. And we were like, we're all in here. What was that? It was like we saw the shadow of somebody leaving the recording room into the next room. but there was no one in there. No cat.
Did anyone
nothing.
go take a look?
We were, we like acknowledged it as a group. We were like, that was weird. And then the engineer was like, happens all the time, and just kept going.
So just to quantify, how high?
That was we weren't. I mean, we were smoking weed, but the thing is, the engineer and the producer were not smoking weed, so they saw it at the same time. It was crazy, but the energy was great when things were feeling good in the room. It was feeling really, really great. It was that was the best music experience for the first time I think we could have had going to another country.
Just a quick one whilst we're on Steel Pulse. I'm pretty sure that I stage managed a festival in Birmingham that Steel Pulse headlined.
Sure.
And the one thing I remember is that the bass player had 2 Eden stacks, which is like 2 8x10.
Amlok's from Handsworth. His name's Amlok Tafari. He's the coolest guy ever.
But he's got 2 8x10 Eden stacks World Tour rigs,
Correct.
which are like giant speaker cabinets for anybody else who doesn't know what
And they're on.
And they're pointing at him for the whole show.
He kind of does this. He's kind of having sex with the speakers as he's playing.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, he's one of the best bass players of all time.
Fantastic, but like for anybody who doesn't know, generally if there's a speaker on stage, it faces the audience so it can be part of the show. And he's the only person I have ever seen line up speaker cabinets in front of his own face and have them pointing at him and playing
straight
full
up.
Volume.
Doesn't care.
And it doesn't care. It was the loudest thing I've ever heard. It was incredible.
Yeah, he's one of the greats of all time. And we got to. He's actually the first. He's how I met. He's how I became close to the band. Now that I think about it, I knew Steel Pulse's sound guy. This guy Derek Parker, totally cool guy from DC. Really a champion of Lion Eyes early on, and I begged him for an opening slot. And he said, well, why don't you come down and why don't you meet the band, Why don't you meet someone in the band? So I went to the State Theater in Falls Church, Virginia, and then after the show, the band was on a bus, but they kind of had like an off day the next day, so they were staying at a hotel for a few hours to freshen up before taking off. And I remember after the show, hanging out, and Amlok, that bass player, he said, hey, man, do you have a car here? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, they're going to go to the hotel now, but I'm starving. Can we go to a diner, and then you could drop me at the hotel? And I was like, I was 19, 20 years old. I was like, yes, I will take you to get food. And then, and it was one of those things where I'm always very hungry to learn from people who have been doing it longer and are more successful. So it was just like...
You're also always hungry, too.
I'm also always hungry. But I am very hungry. I do always want to take opportunities to learn from people. And it was one of those things where he loves to tell stories about what it was like coming up and what it's like now. And he's always got some stories. And so I got to spend the whole night just bullshitting. It was like 6 a.m, and by the time we were done.
I think that's just a fantastic lesson for anybody who wants to get into the industry or is in a band or wants to be on the crew or anything. Like, you just have to turn up places and be around, and if someone... Because stuff like that happens all the time. Oh, man, I just want to go to this thing down the road, or it's my favourite place. Can you take me, or can someone take me? Like, these guys don't always have drivers on call or anything like that, or... They're always looking for someone to kind of hang out with to break up some of the monotony to do with touring, and you obviously put yourself in a position that ended up leading to you getting, or helping get you 100%. To open for one of your favorite bands of all time, which is...
Yeah, and then go to Jamaica and record. So I think what's interesting too, I think always make yourself, always be in service, right? Always make yourself available to help people, because people need help. And then you'll learn more from helping someone do something than you ever will just being given something.
Yeah.
I think
the other thing with that is that you've got to be in the right place at the wrong time 9 times out of 10 to be in the right place at the right time. That one time that
100%.
The bass player from Steel Pulse wants to go get dinner.
Yeah.
You just keep putting your hand up, and
I think it comes to... I think it goes back to the episode where we were talking about backstage behavior, right? Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. It's just like, be cool, mind your business and be of service. Like, oh man, the you're hanging out at the venue and you know someone there, and then the guitar player needs a pack of strings and they ran out of strings, but you know where the store is. Go get the strings, man. Immerse yourself, put yourself inside of where you want to be, because ultimately that's how you get into where you want to be. So that one moment led to going to my first out of country abroad experience playing music. Crazy.
It's amazing.
Who knew that we would have these stories?
So first time coming, I know you've been to the UK a lot now, but can you actually remember how you felt about actually having to organise to get plane tickets to come play shows in the UK? Because I know that a lot of bands that you love are from the UK, and kind of getting to tick that box in life must have been...
It was pretty crazy. So I do remember we were on tour with Space Hog and Sponge. Okay, and Space Hog, who I love Space Hog. I mean, what a great band. And they're from Manchester, I believe. No?
I was just saying, Sponge were the second band I ever saw live.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah. So we did a full US tour in the winter with Sponge and Space Hog. And it was really interesting, and the tour was pretty good. It was tough. It was the winter and the shows weren't huge, but they were good. And we learned a lot. I mean, I got to watch the singer from Space Hog is just a monster singer-songwriter. And we went all around the U.S. We played some shows, and then I remember, like, in New York and Long Island, our manager at the time took us out to dinner, and he said, "Hey, I got some great news." This was maybe I forget, it was the winter, so it had to be like December. And he said, "You guys are going to go to the UK for the first time. Clutch is going to take you to the UK." And it was just like, I'll never forget the feeling of being like, yeah, like, this is why I'm doing this. Like, I'm going to go to the place where all my favorite bands come from. And I remember not even thinking it was real. And then, like, 10 minutes later, because of how my brain works, I was like, we need plane tickets. We need gear. We need all this stuff. So it ended up being really crazy. I forget exactly how, but we linked up with Laney Amps.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And Laney sponsored our first 2 tours to the UK for the Lords of the Riff and for Clutch. That was in April. It was in April of 2014.
So when you say sponsor, do you mean they lent you backline?
They gave us tons of gear. They gave us tons of gear to use completely for free.
Which is amazing, because I don't think a lot of people realize how companies like that can help a young band coming over, or
it's everything. Because when you go to John Henry, every first young band, you go, all right, we're going to go to John Henry's, right? Because you fly into London and you go to John Henry's, and then you look at the budget and you're like, it's going to cost us £500 a day for a van and gear. Like, what? We can't do it. Like, we're not even getting paid that much, or we're getting paid that much, like, exactly. So I forget what we did. We rented a van from somebody. It might have actually been Matt Snowball. I'm not 100% sure, but so we rented a van out of London. We didn't know. We just flew into London. Like, we didn't realize you could fly into other cities and work a little less expensive than just going into London. But we drove right to no, you know what? We rented a van from Ian Thurkill at Far Beyond Driven. I love Ian. He's a super nice guy. Now his company's really, right before the pandemic, his company was really taking off. I mean, he has like a fleet of 15 vehicles. Great guy. He drove us. Boy, was he miserable. He did not. He liked us, but he didn't really like us, kind of, that kind of thing. And I'll never forget, we watched Game of Thrones together in the van. We would, like, go into the van and put on the download. He would download it. Anyway, so Ian drove us around, and we went to the deep into the Black Country and got went to Laney headquarters, and Laney hooked us up, just like really gave us a bunch of stuff, and we used their stuff for a few years. You know, we had one keyboard. We borrowed a keyboard. We had one thing. The bass amp was a combo amp. I mean, it was not amazing, but
because I think also what a lot of people won't realize is that for a band coming from the States to come and play in the UK, like the cost of shipping your own gear to come and play those shows would be way beyond anything that you would be getting paid to play
tens
these
of
shows.
thousands of dollars, yeah.
So you have to source something as close as to what you're comfortable using at home in a different country with people that you've never met before, which is where relationships with bands like Clutch are, I'm assuming, really useful because they at least point you in the right direction of who to use and what to do.
Yeah, but the funny thing is we had done 2 tours already when we were like, "Hey, Clutch, where do you get stuff from?" And they were like, "Oh, we would never get stuff in London. You've been working with STS since like 1997 or something." I was like, "Oh, maybe we should also do that too." And then that's actually how we met.
I was gonna say we would get to this eventually.
Yeah. But that first tour was I mean, I still love coming to the UK. There's something about the landscape, and there's something about the cities, and I love it. And the audiences, to me, that was the first time. Okay, so some places in Canada are close. Calgary, Alberta, the middle of Canada is just wild for shows. Like, people are so excited to see bands. But I remember playing in front of a UK audience for the first time and being like, holy shit, this is what it's supposed to be like.
Can you remember where that was?
Newcastle.
No way.
Yeah, the first show we played.
Wow. So do you remember the venue? You did the O2 Academy or?
Academy, on the one on the corner. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you load kind of in the side street. Yeah.
You know that used to be an old bingo hall.
Crazy. Yeah, that we played that night, and it was just, I remember being like, Jesus, being jet lagged. You know, it's your first time over, and you're like, oh my fucking God, you don't know when to sleep, and it was just like, whoa, like, people are drunk and really excited to see a band.
I think the cool thing about a lot of this stuff is that, how long had you been in a band for by that point?
Oh my God, probably 12 years, 14 years.
You've been working for that long, and then you finally get to realize something that at least kind of consolidates in your mind that you're doing the right thing, you belong in a band, in the music industry, kind of. I can imagine it's a big tick box for the hard work.
Sorry, I'm doing the math. So almost 12 years, yeah. About 12 years. It was, yeah. I mean...
So not only are you experiencing a new country and new people to play in front of and all that kind of stuff, but you're also kind of riding the elation of almost feeling like that we actually belong doing this now. Did it feel... Is that a thing?
Yeah, it felt really validating. Like, here's the thing. People get very... I'm guilty of it as much as anything, but when you're so deep inside something...
Yeah.
It's really easy to forget. Like, I remember just even before that tour being like, you know, you have to look back at what you've done, and that's really how you can measure anything. It's not like, oh man, like this band has 10 million YouTube views. Why do they have that? Well, yeah, they have that, right? But they never played a show in the UK, or maybe they look at what you're doing like, holy shit, you're going on tour with Clutch, you've gone all over the Europe and UK with them. That's who would. I mean, I think how you measure things is up to you. There is no standard for what success is. I mean, yes, everyone wants to pay their bills, everyone wants to make money, but success really at the end of the day, I think, is how you measure it. So for me, that's the first time I really felt like we were successful, was going to the UK to play shows.
Yeah, I can well imagine.
Yeah, I still feel that way. I know tons of people who are my age that are doing music that the thought of going to play in another country, I still think for a lot of artists is like wild. You know, it's they're not going to do it. So I felt very grateful for what I had accomplished at that point, and I still feel like that.
Just before we move on, like you said that Clutch were taking you to England. Do you want to explain like how that can kind of happen? Like that a band will actually kind of say we want this band to come with us, or we believe in this band and we want them to come and play some shows. Like
Yeah,
it's
in
not all
2000
decided by promoters and booking agents and everything else.
in 2013, right? So Clutch is, I mean, this will be for a whole nother episode, but Clutch has been a mentor to the guys in Clutch have been a mentor to me and Lion Eyes. Basically, 5 years into our career, they slowly started to try to help us grow. They were the first band besides Steel Pulse to take us on a national tour, which led to we might have done 15 of them at this point. I mean, we so many times around the U.S. with those guys. We were the first and only band to ever be signed to their record label, Weathermaker. And right around the time that we signed to Weathermaker, they wanted to expand our audience to the UK. So they said, we know you're worth negative money over there, but we'll pay you this much per show, and we'll cover some of your expenses. The label will cover some of your expenses. And they made it so that we could go do the show, go do the tour. And it was like 12 shows or something. It was insane. It was amazing.
Because it happens, but it's not a regular thing that a band will go out of their way to invest and help a young band like that.
Very rare. Mostly it's bands handing bands opportunities. So most bands would say, yeah, we want you to come play in the UK with us. Figure it out.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's fair enough. I mean, that's
an opportunity
amazing
in itself.
Yeah, that's good enough. If a band says, hey, come play shows with us overseas, shit, I'm there. But they went way above and beyond what could have been expected. And still to this day, they're very supportive of what I'm doing. So, you know, I feel very lucky. We got to do UK in most people suffer the first time they go to the UK and don't know what they're doing, and it's just miserable. And for us, it was way better than that.
That's really cool. So you mentioned STS. I feel like we should at least say something about those guys, considering they've been really good to me and you.
STS is a production company, and they own gear and staging. They're everything. Staging, lighting, gear, production. In the UK, in Manchester. And the company is run by Pete Dutton, Richard Knowles. I don't know Martin's last name because I just call him Martin.
Aspinall. Do you want me to take this, or you're doing very well?
Probably better. It's probably better that you do it. I'm like, there's these British guys, and they live in a garage in Manchester, and when we show up, they have gear.
Amazing. That's pretty much it. It's magic. It's like a little Aladdin's cave. But yes, they are a production company in Manchester. And especially without a lot of those guys you've mentioned, Paul Collis as well, I literally wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. They've thrown so many opportunities work-wise my way, including the first time I worked shows abroad. So Dom was obviously working for STS. Dom is a mutual friend of ours who's a great sound engineer who used to play drums in a band with me way back when. I think I knew the guys in STS, and he'd slowly been trying to get me some work in there. Essentially, Pete Dutton asked me to drive a van from Manchester to Luxembourg, which is a very small country in the middle of Europe. The capital city of Luxembourg is Luxembourg City. Like, it's like this big. To do an outdoor amphitheater show at a castle in Luxembourg.
Jeez. And you drove all the gear?
I drove all the way there. I got a speeding ticket in Belgium for doing 105 mile an hour going through Belgium because I was going to be late. you're not surprised.
You were listening to Motorhead and just driving as fast as you possibly could.
And yeah, so I turned up at this place, and there's this. I've got some photos somewhere, so I'm going to try and get these cut in. And there's just this amazing castle built into this kind of like rock face with an amphitheater with like 1,500 seats outdoors.
Yeah.
You went to catering up through the castle. There's a guy making steaks on an open grill. Like Dom's there, Pete's there. Like it's so much, yeah. And I was like, oh, so this is what doing shows in Europe is like. This is amazing.
That was it for you, right?
That was my first show, and yeah, I was in. From that point, I was like, I could get used to doing my weekends like this. Went on to do a show in Switzerland. They were basically away for the weekend, so we did 2 shows. So I then drove from Luxembourg to Switzerland.
What was the band? What was the band?
Barclay James Harvest. I don't know if you missed that when I was froze.
Yeah.
So yeah, they did the show in Switzerland. I think it might have got called off because the rain was like lashing down the side of the stage. But we were at this beautiful hotel on a lake in Switzerland. We all went to the bar afterwards. Me and Dom were up till 4:00 in the morning drinking, absolutely hammered. And then it dawned on me that they were all flying back, and I had to leave at 8:30 the next morning and drive all the way back from Switzerland to Manchester.
Rock and roll, baby.
I learned my lesson pretty hard. So I just see the guys getting into their airport shuttle at 9:00 in the morning, and then I have to get in my beautiful VW Crafter and drive all the way back from Switzerland to Manchester.
I love it so much.
But that was just incredibly random, amazing experience. Obviously, not all shows in Europe are in castles or off lakes in Switzerland.
No, but that feeling's pretty frequent, where you show up and you're like, wow, this is awesome.
Okay. Anyway, I've been Dario. Thank you very much for joining us for another episode of Tour Talk. I will see you next week.
Peace.
Thank you for tuning in to the latest episode of Tour Talk. As always, you can find us across the socials at Tour Talk Pod. That's Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Patreon too. Peace!